Welcome to the Innkeepers Podcast. We're glad you found your way here.
Hey, and welcome to the Hearthstone Innkeepers Podcast. I am your host, Avantes. I am joined by my co-hosts.
Hey everybody, this is Andy, or Root from Orlando, Florida.
Hi, and this is Illyri from Halifax, Nova Scotia in Canada. And joining us today is our very special guest, the one and only Mr. Volcano himself, Scott Bites from Lake Forest, California.
And coming up here in episode number 1 of the Innkeepers Podcast, we're going to talk about a couple of things. We're going to talk about how to effectively engage with attendees and get those attendees actually engaged with each other. We're going to talk about the dynamics of hosting large groups versus small groups, creating balanced events for competitive versus casual players, and we're going to try to wrap everything up with how to de-escalate conflicts.
And don't forget, for all your Hearthstone Innkeeper needs, the official Blizzard site is firesidegatherings.com. And for community resources, you can visit the website hsinnkeepers.com. And absolutely don't forget, if you're not already in the Discord server exclusively for Hearthstone Innkeepers, make sure you join.
All right. So this is the point where I play transition music that I don't have loaded up. We'll have that ready to rock for y'all next week. But in the meantime, let's talk to Scott. So, Scott, we're glad you could join us this week.
Hey, I'm glad to be here.
So, a lot of innkeepers probably already know you, but for those who don't, why don't you tell us how long you've been hosting Fireside Gatherings?
Sure. I've been hosting Fire for over a year. How long? I think my first was in the middle of 2015, so yeah, over 2 years.
Awesome. And what would you say is your favorite thing about Fireside Gatherings?
Well, I was actually drawn to Fireside Gatherings. Well, I played a lot of card games growing up, and then I loved World of Warcraft and the lore. So when those came together, I was excited. But then I visited a Fireside Gathering for the first time, and the people that I met there were like the best people ever. So just being able to put on fun events for those people was kind of what drew me to being an innkeeper. And I think in general, you need to be someone who likes to kind of be the host of a party and to show people good time. And I love to do that. So between the love of the game and the love of hosting parties, it's like the perfect marriage to be an innkeeper.
Yeah, that's what really I think we can all agree is one of the most fun things about doing this. So, Andy, why don't you take us away with our first topic of the night?
Sure, that would be how to effectively engage with patrons and get those patrons to engage with each other. Now, Hearthstone is a game that obviously can be played alone. Even if you're playing against another player, sometimes you can still be alone. And as a result, sometimes the Fireside Gatherings that we put on can be socially challenging for some people. Now, Scott, you mentioned a love of putting on parties, and I'm going to lean on this a lot tonight. So how do you, as an innkeeper, engage your patrons?
Wow, there's a few things. I think no matter what the event is, it's important to welcome everyone, to be like, you're the host of a party, and it's your party. You get to make the rules. You get to decide what you want to do. And, that can mean, competitive events. It can mean casual events. But throughout it all, I think talking to people, welcoming them, and making a connection with them. So whenever possible, I think that's kind of how I engage people. And then the events that you make at a Fireside Gathering, you can use to your advantage to kind of help engage with people and help your patrons kind of engage with each other. And a lot of times that for me, that means like social gaming. It means doing things that are outside of the actual game of Hearthstone, and you have kind of tricks that you can use to get people to interact with each other. And a lot of those tricks are things that I came up with, like quest logs and social gaming and things like trivia and building like little props to get people to interact with each other.
Could you give us some examples of what we'd find on your quest logs to get your patrons to interact with each other?
Sure. The reason the quest logs kind of came about is that there was a few events that I would host that were longer events, either like full day events, or they were events that were multiple days, like 2 or 3 days long, like playoffs or preliminary events. And I never wanted anyone to be without something to do. So quest logs were kind of a way to always have a tool for the patrons to kind of go back to in between events. So they can participate in a small tournament or a deck building challenge, and then after that they go back and they have this physical quest log that they can interact with. And on that quest log, like I said, there's things you can do to kind of engage people or help them engage with each other. Some quests would be like social media quests, where it's like find someone that you never met before, and then take a selfie with them and post it to this social media. So that kind of helps people to meet new people, and it also helps them to engage with the community and be a part of your social media all in one go. Other quests would be to participate in specific events. I have a bunch of quest logs that I've made over the years, and they're all available on the HS Innkeepers website. So you can find a huge list of different activities. But there's puzzle quests, there's escort quests that I steal from kind of World of Warcraft lore, where you would have like a little wind-up toy and you would have to guide them along a path in a certain amount of time. There's other quests where you'd have to impersonate a card or make a drawing. So things that happen outside of the game that you can kind of, little activities that can keep people entertained.
And you know what, I would love to add to that, sorry, super quick, because the event I just hosted a Frozen Throne launch party on Saturday, and lo and behold, we had Wi-Fi issues at the beginning, where I had a couple people on laptops that weren't able to connect. And having those bingo cards for people to have something to do while I'm focused on trying to fix a slight issue, it really, not that it saved it, but it really made it so there wasn't a huge amount of pressure with people just sitting around kind of not knowing what to do. They were able to be self-sufficient in that activity. So for that aspect as well, if things maybe aren't going quite to plan and you need to focus not on, those one-on-one moments with people, it's something that they can self-manage just as patrons. And it really is great.
Yeah, I'm actually going to steal a bit of Scott's thunder. I'm doing an event in a couple of weeks, summer playoffs in Boston, and I'm hoping to get him to help me with a little bit on the I want to do a quest log. And one of the things I did that I'm planning on doing for the quest log is I bought a Arthas pop figure that I'm going to hide in the bar. And one of the quests is they have to find the Arthas and take a picture with it.
That is so cool. I love that.
We do that with Pepe.
Oh, nice.
It's more
perfect.
More of a WoW thing, yeah.
Yeah. So for one of the first quest logs we made, it was similar to that. It was you have to kill or you have to defeat Deathwing, and to defeat Deathwing, he's afraid of social media, so you had to find him and take a selfie with him, and that's how you would defeat Deathwing. The same as the pop doll. So yeah, no, I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fun. We did one for the expansion that came out. The first one this year, brain isn't working right now. But we had the
Ungoro Critter
with the Jade Druids, yeah. And so it was like we hid them, 3 different sizes of them around the bar, and they had to find them. It was like one of the quests. So the find quests are really fun.
Yeah. We it depends on your venue, but for our venue, we also had a quest where they had to basically it was a collection quest, which is another kind of quest that you see a lot in World of Warcraft. They had to basically help the bartender by collecting like empty glasses and baskets and stuff and bringing them to the bus area. So it was another one that kind of helped out the bar and helped out the keep the people entertained at the same time.
That is such a great idea.
And the bartender had he had a cool stamp. So, he felt cool being able to stamp people's quest sheet off.
Now, Scott, did that come from your history of being in the restaurant business?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Is that is actually a brilliant quest log right there, because that actually gives the venue, engages the venue at the same time, and it makes them, because a lot of times if you have a sizable event, which we'll talk about here later on, you can make a mess at a venue. If you have your patrons actually cleaning up after themselves, that's brilliant.
Yeah, honestly, I think there's you can do a lot with these quest logs that are kind of dual purpose. You know, you don't have to tell people that's the purpose behind them, but I think there's tricky ways to kind of involve people.
Well, remember that Hearthstone is an amazingly fun game. It can be made more fun with the inclusion of people at the Fireside Gatherings. Now, some people are always going to find it difficult to engage other people face to face, and that's important to understand whenever you're making a quest log or any other type of interaction thing to get people engaged, that some people may have a hard time with that. But people like doing things together and like having fun, including Hearthstone, and that does make things a lot easier to break the ice.
Yeah, that's a great point. There's some people that don't have like a lot of friends or social skills, and it's important to find and include those people and make them feel like part of the event.
Speaking of social skills, you can find most all of our social stuff. We are on Twitter at HS Innkeepers. And, of course, as we said at the beginning of the show, you can check out the website, hsinnkeepers.com, for all of the great resources available. And if you haven't done so yet, please give us a follow here on Twitch so that you know when we go live and be able to keep up with all the great information we're going to be bringing you guys. So, that brings us to our second topic of the night, which I believe this was a question asked last week in the Discord in our podcast chat channel. It's on the dynamics of hosting large groups versus smaller groups. So, innkeepers all over the world have held fireside gatherings for as few as, 3 or 4 friends. And some have held events well over 200 people. And, I know Scott's a great resource for this because he was just involved in running one of the larger fireside events with the launch of Frozen Throne. So what do you feel are some of the dynamics between hosting large groups versus small groups?
Well, I think you have to really, once you get over, I don't know, I'd say maybe 50 people, you have to start thinking about scaling and what things scale well and what things don't. You run into technological issues where, at a certain point, you're going to need more technology to accommodate if you want to do in-game events. You run into logistics issues with how do you funnel people, how do you keep people engaged, and how do you answer questions if they have them at a certain point. So there's a few events that I've done recently that have required a lot of thought in how to keep people engaged and having a good time in a kind of a self-service way. So I think that the most important thing in a large event is still to make that connection when someone arrives at the venue. I think being able to greet someone, tell them what the event is about, explain it in a good way, and kind of set the tone for the event is probably the most important thing. And then to design the event in a way that people can wander around, know what to do, and how to interact with the events. And for events that are 100 plus people, unless you have a venue that can handle that kind of technology, you really have to start thinking of ways to engage them outside of the actual Hearthstone game. And there's a few events that I've run recently, or I've been a part of recently that have been like that. There was a Fireside Festival, which I was a part of with the SoCal Hearthstone people. And that was amazing, and it was involved with Tempo Storm and Red Bull. And that had maybe 100 people there, and there was the PAX East Fireside Gathering, which I was a part of, thankfully. That the Blizzard had me and 3 other innkeepers come and help run. And then finally there was the Frozen Throne party, which was I think we had about 500 people there. Thinking about prizing, how are you going to hand out prizes at an event where there's 500 people? How are you going to decide who gets prizes? And how are you going to design events that don't form a line?
Mm-hmm.
and don't, that people can kind of come and go and enjoy Hearthstone in a way that you don't have to handhold, and you don't have to be a part of it specifically, like once they're through the door. Right.
Now, one of the things we kind of were talking about pre-show was, some of the, differences, and, I think you had kind of talked just briefly about the raffles, how you can have a better shot at, giving away certain prizes because you have fewer people. What kind of happy mediums have you found that work best? Let's kind of say you're somewhere in the middle, with like a 60-person
Sure.
event. What are your favorite kind of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Like ways to give away swag?
Yeah, like what's your favorite way to give away swag?
Sure. Well, I'll take those three examples as they're three completely different ways that we decided to give away swag. And I'm actually really curious what you guys think and what maybe the viewers think is like a fair, fun way to give away prizes to a large crowd. But the way that we did it at the Fireside Festival was something that the SoCal Hearthstone people had used before, which was basically collecting stamps by participating in different activities, and then having a auction at the end of the event where the people that have more stamps can bid those stamps, or can bid the currency or whatever they've collected throughout the event. They can spend that and they can bid on prizes, and it's kind of fun because it gets everyone around and gets people shouting and bidding, and that's its own kind of event of itself, is this auction at the end of the event, or maybe a couple times throughout the event you have these auctions. So that's one way.
That's so cool because it plays into the WoW aspect of it, even though they took away the Heroes of Warcraft underneath the Hearthstone logo. Obviously, a lot of the concepts and characters are drawn from WoW. And I've played WoW for a decade, so I love to always
I know, the auction house is so
that.
cool, right?
Yeah, auction house. I love that concept. Very nice for firesides.
Yeah. So PAX East, what we did is we had a quest log, and anyone that came through the door got a raffle ticket. And then if they completed the quest log, they got a sweet Fireside Gathering pin automatically, but then they also got another raffle ticket. So it was a way of rewarding people for doing the side quests. And then at the end, we just had this great raffle, which again had everyone kind of cheering, and Ryan Hallstrom is the ultimate swag man. He was on the bar shouting, and he is the best prize giver I've ever seen. So shout out to him for that. So that's kind of the second way, is have raffle tickets and do giveaways. So for the Knights of the Frozen Throne Frostside Gathering, where we had 500 people, I actually made it part of the event where when you came in the door, I had a banner and you had to choose between either the Horde or the Alliance, and people from Tempo Storm I had made into kind of like portraits of either the Horde version of them or the Alliance version, and you had to choose a side. And then when you chose a side, you got a wristband that was either red or blue. And then throughout the event, each of the stations where there were side events that you competed at, there was a flag, just like in World of Warcraft, where there's a zone that's controlled by either Horde or Alliance. So as you competed in these side events throughout the night, you were actually fighting for either the Horde or the Alliance faction. And depending on who was in control of the venue, that faction would actually get prizes. And I would have like a giveaway where I'd shout out questions and get answers, and then people from the right faction would get prizes. So again, it made it kind of thematic and part of the event itself.
That's really cool. It sounds like a lot of fun too. All right, so basically the thing to remember is that these groups come in all sizes with their own sets of challenges for each individual innkeeper. It's always best to try to be creative, calm, and reassuring. As long as your patrons are having a good time, basically they're going to go and tell their friends, who will then come and then go and tell their friends, who will hopefully come. And as long as they're enjoying the event, you're going to continue to really kind of grow your patrons. And that's really what we all want to do. We all want to bring in more people, to have bigger events, and just have more fun. So, Aliri, why don't you tell us about topic number 3?
Okay, topic number 3 for tonight is creating balanced events for competitive and casual players. Now, there are a number of ways to play Hearthstone socially, but how do we as innkeepers put on an event to cater to everyone at the same time when you have players coming for different reasons? So one of the things you can do is you can separate the different play styles. So how have you guys catered your firesides for both competitive and casual players?
Yeah, I'm curious. What do you guys do typically?
Well, I can tell you what we do in Orlando is we typically will, if we're running an event that has both a competitive and a non-competitive events going on, we tend to separate the groups. We'll sequester each one. We'll put and it depends. We've had our people who are doing the actual tournament. We'll put them in a conference room or vice versa, either in a large open area or in the conference room. One of the groups will go. We tend to sequester them, except that we don't, whenever we're giving the giveaways, whenever we do our prizes, whenever we do our raffle tickets, we bring everybody together in a central area for that. Between rounds, usually in the competitive tournaments, we bring everybody together, then we break them up again. But we don't let it be too exclusive. Like the conference room that they're in, there's a big glass wall. You can look right through it. You can see everybody in there. We just want the people who are in the tournament, they typically a little more serious than the people who are playing casually, playing different games casually. And the people playing different games casually are a little louder than the people who are doing the tournament. So that's why we sequester them, keep them apart. But we do like to strive to keep everybody engaged, which is why we bring them all back in the middle at the same time. And then some of those days we've actually broken for lunch and brought pizza in and brought everybody together again for a meal and food before we break them apart. So we don't keep them completely separated.
That's super cool. No, I like that.
And one of the things
I've never even thought about that. That's actually a really good idea.
I wanted to harken back on one little point here, and that's when you were mentioning the raffle tickets. We actually started a new thing a couple Fireside Gatherings ago where we now have 2 classes of raffle tickets. We have the normal blue tickets that everybody gets for like showing up, for doing a quest log, for just whatever. They're very easy to get. And those get the normal prizes. And then we have our golden tickets, which are our bigger prize items. And that's where we actually have somebody, I don't want to say jump through hoops, but it's jumping through hoops. They're either doing something socially engaging. They're taking the pictures like your Death Wings things. They're doing something that is a little more than just, hey, I rolled out of bed and showed up to your fireside event. It's having them do a little more. So for that, the prizes are better, but the tickets are harder to get. But it still keeps everybody engaged and happy.
See, the way I've done raffles in the past, I've only done a few. I'm a relative raffle noob, but I will give out a ticket at registration when they come to check in for the event, and between rounds, I will draw a random ticket out while people are finding their opponent and sitting down. Between rounds, I'll draw out a ticket, give away a prize. Next round, between rounds, give away a prize. It keeps people in their seats. I've had issues in the past and this is a topic we're going to talk about on another show with, players coming in, playing a round or two, and then like, I've got to go or something, I don't know, do they have to go? Or are they just bored? But, I found that, giving out little small prizes through the raffle between rounds keeps people in the seats, waiting to see if they're going to win and stuff like that. So,
but a lot of times, go ahead, Larry.
I was gonna say, do you guys use the name tags, use the numbers on those, the ones that come in the support kits from Blizzard? Because that's what I do. I use the numbers instead of tickets typically, so that everyone really does have a chance. That's kind of fair, and there's specific prizes for that. And then the tournament, which I try and make it a format so the first round, everyone can compete, and they're going to get a bunch of games so that people feel like it's not quite so, highly competitive. Because I find the community I'm in now, it's not built for that yet. When I was in Toronto organizing, focused way more on the competitive because there were other people doing casual stuff. So we would have very competitive tournament-based firesides because I was trying to prep these players for the HCT and whatnot. But it does depend on your community where you should emphasize. But you can hit that sweet spot in the middle where, the first round can be a group of 4 or 5 round robin. There's resources that Blizzard have been posting with awesome little printables that you can mark the scores on for those to keep it very, just accessible to these players, and they get a bunch of games, and then hopefully that inspires them to maybe be a bit more comfortable next time, going a bit more competitive with it.
We had a very interesting tournament a couple gatherings ago. We had a wild tournament, and the beauty of that, it was kind of, people came in and they just had fun. They knew there weren't any kind of points on the board. They weren't going to be advancing or anything. It was bragging rights, and it was a wild tournament, and people would come up with these crazy combinations and whatever, and people would leave their seats to go around to look at the person's crazy attack, even the person they were playing, and it was all fine. We kind of threw all the hardened tournament rules, we threw those away. We just said, have fun. This is a fun tournament. And people had a really good time at that tournament. That, we won't do that for a qualifier or anything else, and they know that. But for a fun little wild tournament, they had a blast.
That's super cool. I actually went to 2 Fireside Gatherings this last week, and they were both very casual tournaments. So there wasn't a lot of highly competitive play going on. One was Inspire by Eric in Chino, an awesome innkeeper, and he did deck building, a deck building challenge. There was a tournament also, but it was a release party, so we did pack opening, bingo, and it was actually a lot of fun. He had kind of a sabotage rule where we had to sabotage each other's decks every round. That got progressively worse and worse, and that was a really fun event. And then just yesterday, I went to Arwen has a coffee and cards at a Starbucks, and there was almost 20 people there. I think it was a huge turnout, and she was picking her tavern versus tavern champions. But Arwen does something really cool. Every week she has a different quest sheet with 3 quests on it, and as you complete these quests, you get points for them. And you just keep them every week, and then you can turn the points in like you would when you go to an arcade or something where they have prizes. So the more of these points you collect, you can turn them in for bigger and bigger prizes. And some of the quests are competitive, and some of them are casual. So it kind of mixes the two together. And I thought that was a really unique way of doing it. And she has these different quest logs for the last 8 weeks now. So if you finish one, you can just get another one, and you can pair up with people, and you're like, oh, what quest do you have? Oh, I have this quest. Can you help me complete that? And that was a really cool idea, I thought.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah, I really had a good time. And there was one point I remember I was playing as a priest, and I had 5 Sherazin, the legendary from Rogue. The seeds that when you kill them, it goes away, and you have to play 4 cards in a turn. I had 5 of those on my board somehow. I was a priest, and both me and the Rogue player I was playing against had 60 cards in our deck because we kept stealing each other's Archbishop Benedictus. Or it was a crazy match. Anyway, sorry to go off topic, but I just had to talk about that. It was a blast.
That's the beauty of Hearthstone. You have these insane, roller coaster moments of up and down, and that really is the beauty of a fireside.
And we had people all around us.
That.
Yeah, they were watching us, and everyone's cheering. It was amazing. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, super fun.
All right, so. Do you have anything, Scott, that you would like to plug while you're with us?
Oh, plugs. Sure. So I have a couple events coming up. One, first off, is the Tavern versus Tavern on September 9th. This is the first time that Hearthstone is doing this official event where basically it's going to be taverns all over North America, right? And they're hosting a simultaneous fireside gathering, and each of the taverns has the innkeepers basically have put together a team of 3 people that are going to be representing the tavern as their champions, and they're going to be fighting against all the other taverns simultaneously in a group phase, and then in a competition phase, and then eventually hopefully a couple of them get to BlizzCon to compete. So I'm actually going back the last 20 years I've lived in Phoenix, and that's where I started as an innkeeper. And I just moved to California maybe 4 or 5 months ago, but I feel like my Hearthstone family is still in Arizona. So I'm going back and I'm representing a tavern in Arizona just to make sure that they have a team that's fighting for them called the Spicy Boys. So I'm really excited. If anyone's in Arizona, in the Phoenix area, and wants to come out, it's going to be a fun event at the Grid Games and Growlers in Mesa, Arizona. And I made this little teaser trailer for my team. You can find that on my YouTube channel. It's Bytes HS. It's BYTES HS. That's my Twitter also. I've been making, this last week I made a couple of trailer videos. One was for the summer playoffs, and one was for the Tavern vs. Tavern. And I made them in such a way that I want to be able to plug other innkeepers' information in there, and so that they can promote their events also. And I've already done a couple of other promotional materials. I did one for Winnipeg, and I'm working on another one right now to promote their tavern teams. So anyway, that's September 9th. And then on the 16th and 17th, a lot of venues in Americas are going to be hosting the summer playoffs. Admission. There's events all across the Americas. So if you're near one of those, I would definitely recommend kind of going out. It's a 2-day event. There's usually a ton of side events and then competitive play. There's something, if you've never been to a Hearthstone event, that's a great place to start. You'll meet a lot of people, and usually you'll have a lot of fun at those. So I'm going all out. I'm having a special guest innkeeper show up, a secret innkeeper. And then I built, for Comic-Con, I built Lich Mountain, which is a conversion of the volcano. So basically, it's an interactive volcano / mountain with a lich head on it that talks to people, and you have to defeat the Lich King, and smoke comes out. So I'm going to be bringing Lich Mountain with me to my playoffs event, along with a bunch of quests and other fun things. So I recommend, if you're in the Southern California area, to come out on the 16th and 17th to see the summer playoffs.
Awesome. It's going to be awesome, guys. Go if you are anywhere near driving distance, flying distance, go to one of these events. They're going to be a lot of fun. So, all right, Andy, take it away.
Well, we talked about a lot how we're being inclusive. We have a lot of different people from different facets, and a lot of people who are, they may find it socially challenging to be in a group of people. And we have a lot of also serious people when it comes to playing Hearthstone. And things don't always go as planned. As Depeche Mode once quipped, people are people, so why should it be that you and I should get along so awfully? So from time to time, and I'm going to lean on O'Leary a little bit on this one here, time to time something's going to happen that's going to cause someone to not be very happy with the solution. So how do we de-escalate these conflicts that may arise?
Hi, sorry, I was just talking in the chat, in the Twitch chat there. I'm talking about the Twitter account. So I covered resolving disputes in my presentation at the Innkeeper Summit. So the trick I have learned is, I guess the thing to focus on or to always remember is that if a player is getting upset because they disagree with the admin decision on something, it's because they care. It's because they're really passionate about the event. And so it's really important to not focus on the player, but to focus on the issue. For instance, if a player comes up to you or if you discover that a player has been using pen and paper to track their cards, but the rules say no deck tracking or trackers allowed. Technically, it doesn't say no pen and paper, and they could have understood that to mean a software, like a third-party software system. But that's not how the rule is meant to be implemented, and everyone else is competing under the basis of not being able to track at all. So it is a misunderstanding, but based on the rules, there is still going to be, an infraction against the player. And that can be very upsetting to a player, especially when they have read the rules and they thought they understood them, but they're surprised by something and they're being penalized for that. So the best way to approach that is to, instead of focusing on the player, because they'll take up your time. The players will, be very upset, and they'll keep the conversation going, but you as the innkeeper need to keep the tournament going, and you can't let it take up too much time because you have everyone else to consider, and you always need to try and keep the tournament on track. So instead of saying to the player, you need to get on with your match, just say the match needs to continue. Focus on the match aspect of it. And if they're really upset about how the rule is being enforced or the decision, especially if one of your Fireside team admins has given the decision and they needed to speak with someone, higher up, so they're going to go to the innkeeper, you say, as it stands, the rule must be enforced as designed. You're deflecting the issue so that the player isn't the issue, and that it's about continuing the match, and that the rule, as it's been designed, that's how it is supposed to be implemented. But the key to actually getting them to go along with that, once you have deflected, is that you need to give them a type of resolution. You need to give them an outlet. So, for instance, I'll give my email address and I'll say, email me everything you feel about the situation, and before the next event, it will be reviewed, and we will take your feedback into consideration when reviewing it. Because if a player has misunderstood a rule, that could definitely happen again. And that's not to say the rules are written badly, but it does highlight potentially something that can be further elaborated upon in your rules. So that's how I tend to go with it, deflect from it being a player problem to being more about continuing the tournament. The rule was designed this way. Sorry if that was confusing. We will review it before we run another event. How do you guys deal with that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's great. I learned a lot from you actually in the first Innkeeper Summit, because I actually didn't do. I did an all right job. I've always been good about listening. Coming from the service industry, they teach you LAST, which is listen, apologize, solve, thank. So the first part is listening. I think listening and being, a little bit empathetic to their situation goes a long way. And then, apologizing isn't always the right. You want to apologize, but I had always been a little bit too apologetic and not enough firm, and like, this is the rule and this is the way it has to go. I'm always someone who wants to. I'm a people pleaser, so I want them to be happy. So like, a lot of times I would give the initiative to the players, and I would ask them like, hey, is it okay if we replay this game? Is it okay with you? And that puts the power in the other player's hand. But they're going to feel bad about it. Like, even if they say, oh, yeah, that's fine, I can replay, they might not think, at that time, like, they might think, oh, this is, BS. I don't want to replay this match. I won, So being able to be decisive and firm and having rules that you stand behind is something that I learned from Illyri at the summit. And I think that goes a long way. And you don't have to be a jerk about it. You just have to, like you said, you don't make it about the person, you just make it about the rule. This is the rule.
Yeah, so. Exactly. And yeah, it is hard though, because you feel for these players who have obviously, dedicated time to practice, and they're coming with all these hopes and dreams of doing really well, and then something just catches them off guard, and then they're suddenly in this position, and they can feel really backed into a corner, and giving them an outlet to be listened to, and then feel like, okay, well, before the next event, things will be looked at. It does make them feel a bit better,
Yeah, I always tell them, it's very important to make sure you, take plenty of screenshots. You can never take too few screenshots. And,
yes.
And, then, I'll sit down with the players, and, we'll talk about the situation, what's going on, and I'll explain the rule, and if they have any questions, I'll let them ask back, and then we just go forward based on the best scenario. And that's I feel like if everybody just sits down, talks through the situation, you explain it to them, and usually they will most issues will resolve themselves at that point.
Yeah, it is a bit of what Scott said, though, where you want to take the decision making for whether it's a regame or not out of the player's hands, because you will have those players that they're just there to kind of play. They might feel, oh, this person's taking it more seriously, and just, if it shouldn't ever be in the player's hands if it's a regame or not. It should be just really clear in the rules if it is or if it isn't. And the whole lethal in hand or on board thing, and screenshots, exactly like you said. Take screenshots, because once these players get to the HCT, like we all know from running playoffs locations, that if they don't have screenshots, even if we saw it, even though Blizzard trusts us as an innkeeper, they're not going to do anything without a screenshot. And it's getting them in that habit of it to protect themselves as well. It's not trying to be overly controlling as an innkeeper. You're just trying to give the players the tools to protect themselves should an incident come up.
And kind of to go back a little bit on what Scott said about apologizing or saying you're sorry, there are plenty of ways to tell somebody that you are sorry for what's happening without you apologizing to them. I'm sorry you feel this way. I'm sorry this happened. I'm sorry you've had this reaction, or a bunch of ways without you admitting any kind of guilt. I'm sorry that this is happening. I'm sorry there was a disconnect, whatever it might be. You can still apologize and acknowledge that situation without claiming responsibility for it. But in that, one of the things that I think we tend to forget about is our body language. I'm a little bit of a larger guy, and I can often, when I'm going into a resolution conflict situation, I have to be very cognizant that I'm not coming up there like Johnny Law and, like I should have on my Smokey the Bear hat or something, like I'm coming in as the enforcer. I've got to watch that. I've got to come in very subdued, hands behind my back, be very open and let them know that, disarming, and let them know that I'm not there to attack, but I'm there to resolve. And the other thing that I have to stress, and I have to stress with myself as well, is my tone. I don't want to sound condescending. I don't want to sound threatening. I don't want to sound like I don't care or I'm not engaged. I have to be careful how I say things, what I say, and my entire body language during the entire process. Because you just want to get them back to their happy place, Everybody's supposed to be happy. It's Hearthstone. I mean, come on, let's sit down. Let me get you another beer. Whatever the case might be, let's fix the situation and move on. And you have to understand also that you can get a complaint in the nighttime, and if you have 20, 30, 40 patrons there all playing your Hearthstone, and if one person complains about something, sorry. If it's lighting or music or temperature, if it's one person, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Nothing I'm going to do about it, but I'm sorry they feel that way. If it's 10 or 15 people, yeah, I'll go do something. I'll change the music up, or I'll tell them not to have the strobe lights on or whatever. But if it's one person, that's one person. I'm not going to make a change for one person, because then you end up changing your entire venue 12 times during the evening to compensate or to make 12 people happy, and that just gets a little bit out of control.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. And I just want to say, like, Hearthstone people, like, the amount of these conflicts are usually really small, and you're right, just like, yeah, hey, have a beer, or like, just let's hang out and talk. Like, people get salty, people get like a little emotional sometimes if they lose. It's never fun to lose, but like, I don't know if you guys have a different experience than I do, but the people that come to my events, they just have a good time, and they're there to hang out with other people. And sometimes there's competitive events, and that's kind of a different animal. But like, for the most part, like, Hearthstone people are happy, they're fun, they're there to have a good time, and it's not that big of a deal. You do have to handle things in the right way, but I don't want to end like this topic on a downer, saying like that people are going to be like angry and complain, and you got to cater to people. Like, people that come to these events are usually they're cool, like, so don't feel too intimidated by them.
No, I do feel though that it is good to go in prepared as an innkeeper with just a few phrases, just a few things to have in your back pocket that you're comfortable saying. And it's like Ruth said about your tone, just honestly practice in front of a mirror, because you don't want to be condescending, and you want to hurry them along without them feeling rushed. But going in prepared as an innkeeper to keep those situations as explosive as they could be, because we are just trying to have fun and run a fun thing. And you're right, most of the time people are good about it because they are just there to have some fun and play some Hearthstone.
There, and most of the time, what I found is if there is any kind of an issue that pops up, it's just two people, an issue happens, and they want a third party who is non-objective, not involved, to tell them what to do. Just, hey, what do you want us to do? Replay the match. All right, cool.
Exactly.
Yeah, there you go.
It's done. It's that simple. That is the highest escalation I've ever done in the 2 years I've been doing this. It's just like, replay. And they go, okay. Because I, as an innkeeper, didn't make it into an issue. So if it's not an issue for me, it's not going to be an issue for them because I'm the guy running the tournament. So if the innkeeper is cool about it, they're going to be cool about it. Or give them more raffle tickets.
I got after Illyria was talking, I got this image in my head of her staring at herself in the mirror, saying like the match must continue as the rules. Just like very seriously, and I just can't get it out of my head.
Was she trying in different styles, like in Taxi?
Yeah, exactly.
I can neither confirm nor deny. No, actually, I don't know if I've ever done that, but I do feel it is a good practice technique if you're uncomfortable. But I remember the early days, like I was involved with very high-profile tournaments and would have people yelling at me, just like because they didn't understand, and I did not have the coping or managing tools at the time to know how to handle the situation. But going forward, I was like after those situations, I was like, okay, I need to have these set phrases that deflect the attention away, because you're also if you're at a big LAN or something, you might not be the main innkeeper. You could be working with an admin team who don't know these things, who aren't used to this kind of approach, and who, unknowingly, like, they're not trying to do this, but they can flare up the situation because they're just trying to move things along because it's a big tournament and this person's holding it up. But like the innkeeper in me comes out, it's like, no, I'll handle this. It's okay. Like you learn the little tips and tricks from the community firesides that when it comes to the bigger firesides, there's something about really big events that like players there's just a bit more pressure on them, I think. They just really want to do well. So I don't know if I ever really stood in front of a mirror and did that stuff, but, if it helps you to be comfortable with it, because, it's like you said, if you can go into the situation, just be like, this is what you do, the 9 times out of 10, they're just going to be like, okay, and then continue. It's not going to blow up and be a problem because you're confident in that situation to know how it should progress and continue.
Yeah, I think Scott said it best. People are passionate, and the game can be emotional at times. Wouldn't you agree, Root?
I think we can all agree.
Absolutely, yeah. Especially right now when someone starts playing all them druids, you're just like,
oh my god.
But if you just take the time to listen, you try to come to fair and reasonable understanding, just remain calm yourself, it all works out. It really, really does.
Absolutely. All right. So, what did we learn this week? Go in, be an innkeeper, be compassionate. Don't be this guy. Don't be the guy that stomps around the room looking to throw people out because they don't agree with you. So, all right. Well, that's good. So, go ahead.
Wait, before we head off, I just wanted to see if we had any questions from any of our chat channels there.
Yeah.
Illyria, did you have any?
Okay. Real talk.
Real talk.
How long, I think you have videos on this, but how long from beginning to end does it take to build a volcano? I'm asking for a friend.
Well, it depends if you have a genius engineer friend that can help you with some of the programming. It took us a week, actually, start to finish. We planned for a couple weeks before. And then, when it actually came to build time, it was about a week of long nights. I have a day job, so it was. We would work from like 5 p.m. until midnight or 1 a.m. Most nights. And then it was actually the volcano came together pretty well. But when I reconverted it into Lich Mountain, which is the one that we use for Comic-Con, we were actually down to the wire, down to the minute. That we had to leave for San Diego to get there in time. We were supposed to leave at 10:30 in the morning, and at 10:30 in the morning, basically everything broke, and we had to start over from scratch, reprogramming it, and we had to leave at the very latest by 1 o'clock to get there, and at 1 o'clock, nothing worked. At 1:15, it kind of worked, and we had to load the truck, and then I was basically bringing it, and I had to solder it on site, and so things don't go well all the time, and it's one of those roll with the punches kind of moments, but everything works out in the end, So yeah, but start to finish a week if you have the know-how to build a functional, interactive volcano.
Awesome.
And I learned not to call it paper mache either.
Oh no! How dare you, sir?
Root, did you have a question?
I did. I've got a question from Jana here. She wants to know how we deal with a person who is brand new to the game, never played, and shows up to the very first Fireside Gathering, having just barely logged into the game.
All right, so let me. I've actually had this situation. I was actually running summer playoffs last year, and we had a guy walk in. He just saw the event through the window where we were, and he was like, "Hey, what's going on?" And so I and one of my other admins started talking to him, and we told him about the game, and he was like, "Well, is it possible to play?" And we're like, "Sure." So we took him over and sat him down at one of the spare accounts, or one of the spare computers, and my admin sat down with him and walked him through creating an account, walked him through setting up battle.net launcher and starting the game, and then got him started into the tutorial, and kind of came back over and checked in with me, and then went back and kind of helped walk him through and teach him the basics while he was going through the tutorial, and then kind of left him to play through for a little while. If he had any questions, all he had to do was holler at us. But that was what we did, though. I've only had that situation happen once in all of my years doing this, but it's good to be able to interact, I feel like, with those types of players in a one-on-one situation.
Scott, have you ever had that happen?
Oh yeah. So there's difference between someone who's never played and someone who's new to the game, I guess. Never played is difficult because of the tutorial. It kind of, hopefully one of these days we'll be able to have a way to skip the tutorial and get people playing.
Innkeeper.
Yeah. But if they've never played, then they have to go through the tutorial. That can be kind of rough. Sometimes you can just pair them up with someone who's another player, so they can kind of show them the ropes. It's like a learning moment where they can get someone that in your community that's really excited already about Hearthstone and is maybe a good spokesperson for Hearthstone that wouldn't mind showing the game to someone new. If it's a new player and you have time, I like to handhold a lot. And I like to go over and make sure they feel welcome, make sure they feel involved. Just at the event I was at yesterday, there was two people, one person that had played before but hadn't played in a long time, and then his girlfriend, who basically was brand new to the game. And they were off by themselves because they felt kind of shy and they felt intimidated by everyone else. So I just made an effort to go over, sit with them for an hour almost, and just play some games with them and talk with them about Hearthstone and kind of get that excitement going. So yeah, hand holding, spending time, more face-to-face contact, I think, is important.
What about you, Larry? Any kind of new player experience?
So I had a newer player come in on the weekend at my launch party, and it was a young girl. She was probably about 14, and she came in and could tell she was very new, never been to a Fireside before. And so I gave her a bingo sheet, and I said, well, why don't, you're welcome to sit here, and put her next to another young kid that was there with his uncle. And that's a cute story in itself. But then, when I turned around after 2 minutes, there was this lady standing next to her, and it was her mom. And I acknowledged her mother, was like, hi, how are you, kind of deal. And she was pleasantly surprised, I guess, at that it was someone taking the time to do that, even though she kind of clearly wasn't really there to be a part of the event. And she ended up just dropping off her daughter and leaving her there for a little bit in the mix of things. And honestly, I find having the things like a bingo sheet And one of our guy Sam, there we go, from Kansas City, great innkeeper. He has a file that is, or was it Ben? Was it Ben that made it? Oh, now I can't remember. They're both graphics innkeepers. Anyway, I'm pretty sure it's Ben now. But it was the card back. It was the Frostmourne card back, the pre-order card back for Frozen Throne, and it's a coloring like activity. And so once I saw that they kind of like got through most of the bingo sheets, I took that over, and then that kind of keeps their enthusiasm going. So even if they're not, able to really get into playing games, I find having super drop in and participate activities can really help those newer players, maybe even like spark up their passion a bit more for the game, so that they play a bit more at home, so that next time they come to the event they can participate more in playing the game itself.
Awesome. Okay, well, I think that's going to do it for us this week. So let's let everybody know where they can find us. Root, we'll start with you.
Sure thing. You can find me over at on the Twitters at HearthcastRoot. I do happen to have a little show I've been doing for Blizzard stuff at Hearthcast. You can find that on iTunes and anywhere else that you get your goodness, your podcasting goodness.
Okay, O'Leary?
Get your goodness. Sorry, I'm just... What are you selling? You can find me on Twitter at O'Leary. We have a couple of new bots going in the chat. And we'll have this every week. If you ever want to see where to find one of us, just do the exclamation point and then the name that's on the screen, and you're going to see a link to our Twitter.
All right. Scott, you want to tell everybody one more time where they can find you?
Sure. You can find me on Twitter at BytesHS and on YouTube. And actually, I would like if people could go to YouTube. I'm just starting to put content up there, and I did just start working on making video content for Hearthstone Innkeepers. It would mean a lot to me if people could watch those videos and let me know if they like them or not, and give them a share. So yeah, it's on YouTube and Twitter at BytesHS.
And Avantis, where can people find you?
Well, they can find me here, and they can also find me on Wednesday nights on Hero Power. It's also another Hearthstone podcast I do. You can find me on Twitter at AvantisHS. And I'm usually lurking in the Innkeeper Discord. Leary, why don't you give them a little more info about that?
The Innkeeper Discord is an amazing, amazing place. Basically, we have innkeepers from all around the world. We have innkeepers from Japan, from Singapore. We have Brazil. We got a lot of people from Brazil. They're real fun, so shout out to Brazil, guys. We got a couple from Hawaii. Like we are. It is a community effort of innkeepers to connect and to share our resources. All the kind of things that we're talking about tonight with the bingo cards and the coloring card backs. Like, those are being developed by innkeepers for innkeepers. So if you're looking for some extra resources for yourself, definitely check out the hsinnkeepers.com website. But definitely join us in the server as well, because that's where we can really chat about our events and what we're working on to share with the community.
All right, gang. As we close the show, we want to thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.
Cheers!
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Innkeepers Podcast. For all sorts of Hearthstone community-related goodness, check out hsinnkeepers.com. Come on now. Are you just roping me along?